Hello and welcome to the Worn and Wound podcast. My name is Blake Bettner and I'm in studio today with Patrick Marlett. Hey, Patrick.
Howdy.
You're the guy that I see on Whatnot.
That's right.
He's the Whatnot guy.
Whatnot. I've actually never been on Whatnot, but I saw you doing it the other day. So
I
guess you're like famous now.
You almost
right?
walked in with a slice of pizza.
I almost did. I was like, what the
I
hell
saw
are you guys doing in here?
And then you were gone when I was done. It was like an hour and 30 minutes of whatnotting. It's fun though.
Whatnotting, it went well. Good.
Yeah. Why not?
Whatnotting.
Why not Whatnot? We've also got Thomas over there. Hey, Thomas, how are you?
What's happening, fellas?
We're all good here, you know. We're in that. Did I say this last time? Was I like, oh, we're in this like weird bridge between Thanksgiving and Christmas?
Yeah.
We're gonna do that on every single one until Christmas.
Right.
Did you say that? Deja vu. I don't remember you saying that. So that's new to me.
Exactly. Well, Zach wasn't here for it, so isn't that weird? Hey, Zach Kazan, how are you? How's Concord?
Hello, I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
Good.
So far, so good. I got an IPA in my hand, which I normally don't drink.
IPA.
Yeah.
An all-day IPA.
I guess I could
Founders.
be better. Yeah, this is okay.
It's a good Michigan joint there, right? Founders, they do some good stuff. It's better on draft, obviously. But
Right, everything is though.
of course.
Yeah.
So we are here to talk some watches. We've got some new releases, and we're here to talk some buying advice, maybe, along with some watches that are still kind of like lingering in the back of our head, that we've been following our own buying advice guide a little too closely. Maybe some watches that we broke our own rules for. We'll get into all that maybe and more. Before we do, though, Zach Kazan, what do you got on your wrist?
I'm wearing my recently acquired IWC 3706 Pilot's Chronograph today.
Are you still bonding with it? You still enjoying it?
Yeah, love it. It's just a really easy watch to wear. I've been wearing it pretty consistently since I picked it up. So
nice.
Yeah, it's a great watch.
It is an easy watch to wear.
Yeah.
Well, I'll get to you later. You've got two watches on right now. Thomas, what are you wearing?
Today I have on my Doxa Sub 300 Shark Hunter.
Very cool.
Yep,
Nice.
it's on a gray NATO. I was actually wearing the Tissot Telemeter 1938.
Yeah.
It was on, just doing some last minute hands-on stuff with it. And I had stashed this watch in my pocket. And earlier we were recording some video and, I reached into my pocket and pulled out a watch. And Patrick was like, dude, do you just normally like keep watches in your pocket?
There's a Doxa in my pocket.
Yeah, exactly.
Just a jacket pocket.
Just casually.
There's like a lozenge, an old receipt, a Doxa.
and a Doxa, right? Because you just never know.
Just normal watch person things.
Exactly.
It's all right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just never know.
Yeah, I've done that a time or two myself. That's all right. I'm wearing a Tudor Pelagos FXD today, a Marine Nationale, with all those markings and stuff on the back.
Is that the 22? 20?
This is the I think it's the 22. Yes,
All right.
I'm pretty sure.
You don't touch the 21.
The 21 I have
noticed that.
kind of just stashed away.
Well, we've discussed it's not GPHG award winning. It's
Yes,
why.
only the 22 yes,
Right.
meets that high standard. So that's the one I wear.
Only GPHG winners for Blake.
Yes,
Right.
yeah,
Exactly.
that's my new rule.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've been wearing the Mad one, right? Or the Mad what is it called?
Yeah, the Mad one. Yeah, that's a hard watch to wear.
Oh.
The Mad one. It's visually very stunning to look at it in like as like an object, but on the wrist. On my wrist, I should say. It's not uncomfortable. It's just kind of unwieldy, I guess I would say.
Fair enough.
So,
Yeah.
but I wore this because you have a watch with some of those marking things on the on the back as well that you just got today. Tell us about this.
There's some military heritage behind this one.
Well, maybe first you can tell us what's on your right wrist. Because just to clarify, you're wearing two watches.
Yeah, this is not normal for me, but
It's totally normal.
Someone pointed out that this watch looked small on me. I'd love to get everyone's opinion. But this is a Rado Captain Cook. This is a limited edition 37 millimeter variation of the watch, and it has this dial that's supposed to look like an older tropical dial. Sometimes you'd see them patternized to this sort of yellowish tone, like the vintage offerings. This one, it just has a sort of field of gold kind of color tone to it with a sunrise finish. I really like it, and I think it fits my wrist perfectly.
But there's like a green hue to it.
Yeah.
To me, it looks like
Right.
like a cocktail that you made with like some green chartreuse in it. That's the vibe it gives me.
Yeah, I totally get that. This is very much like a cocktail kind of watch.
Yeah.
But no, I love this
I don't think it
piece.
looks too small. Yeah, I think it looks fine.
No, I don't think either.
Yeah,
Yeah,
37's
so,
a good size. Looks good.
yeah, so screw you, John, on whatnot or whatever his name
Yeah,
was.
John. God.
Yeah, but no, I mean,
Classic
I find it to be a good fit for me. other watch I'm wearing is don't mind me fiddling with my laptop here. I just got this in today. It arrived super early, so kudos to you, Cabot Watch Company, for sending my CWC so quickly, literally like a day and a half DHL from the UK to our door
Wow,
here.
impressive.
Super impressive. So I bought it with sort of the added benefit of purchasing from their site at that time was that they have these, I think they're called RM Falcon. They're these new old stock buckle straps combos that apparently were military issued. This one's dated 1983. But basically, I wanted to get that with the watch because 83 is actually when they introduced the quartz version of this particular reference. This is a modern version of the watch, but it's commonly referenced as a Monin style case. I might be mispronouncing that. But the case itself has a lot of history, and CWC has been producing the case for quite some time. So I got a restock notice on a different model, and then I wound up purchasing this because of the movement. This uses a high accuracy quartz ETA movement, which is appealing to me, while the 1983 vintage reissue, that might not be the exact name, utilizes a Ronda, which might actually be more accurate to what they used back then, but it was not as appealing to me as a plus or minus 10 seconds a year accurate quartz movement. So I picked this up, really like it. Obviously, this is just my first blush with the watch, so I'm smitten.
I love the case and bezel on that watch. Are stunning. It is so cool. I've seen a few CWCs in person, but this configuration. I like this a lot.
Yeah, with the matted steel case and CWC, they're just known for just having a really, really, really good bezel. And just the one thing about that watch is just the lugs, how the lugs kind of cut away towards the end there. I don't know, there's a specific like style like that's called, but yeah, it's just really cool.
Yeah, it's actually. They're really good with options as well because this particular watch in quartz has 3 configurations, technically 6. You can get all polish, matted, and/or I think it's navy spec where it's brushed on top of the lugs, and then those cutaways you're referencing are high polish and the sides are high polish. But you can also get any of their models destro. So if you wanted with the crown on the left-hand side, so over at the 9 o'clock instead, you can do that. It's really cool. And again, like, with how quickly, I think those take a little bit longer for them to set up for you, so that might not ship next day and arrive at your door. But no, really, really, all in all, great experience. I've owned vintage CWCs. This is my first modern one, and I'm really happy with it thus far. Got to say that.
Very cool. Well, congratulations. It looks great.
Thank you.
It's quartz.
And it's cool.
And it's great. It says it right there on the dial.
It does. Yeah. It's not shining away from. When you say that, like high accuracy quartz, and I hear this with like Grand Seiko, they use it in their language too, where they're like it's accurate to X within a year. Does that mean like is your goal to like I don't want to have to set this watch for a whole year?
Exactly. It is that. It's interesting because I don't know if like high accuracy quartz, if there's an exact standard in the industry, is it like high beat 28800 or now 3600? Like, is there? I don't know if plus or minus 10 seconds qualifies as high accuracy quartz, but I've seen this described as such. For me, I do look for that because I do want all my watches to be in step with each other and also to be able to just pick up any watch from my watch box and know it's set and matched with all my other watches. So yeah, I can happily look at my box and see the hands ticking in harmony together. It's very appealing. And I'm maybe crazy to hear, but I really like it. So I'm adding.
So they have to be in sync with each other. That's an important component for you.
Well, the tuna runs ahead of time. I'm finding when in comparison to my Grand Seiko, but provided it doesn't go too far out of sync with the other watches, like I'm not going to reset them. So daylight savings, I did have to, set the watches. It depends on the type of watch, because the Grand Seiko, the second hand will still run. But I will inevitably have to change the times, and that will stop the second hand. So they kind of reset themselves.
So daylight savings going on and off, traveling to other time zones is like a huge annoyance for you.
Yes, the inconvenience of life. But I mean, there you go. Those are those like high points in my week where I get to play with the crown again.
It could be a high point in your like every day. So I would argue that the watches that I wear, when I wear them, are just as accurate, if not more accurate, than your net average throughout the year. Because when I pick one up to wear it, most of them are like chronometers or whatever. I open up time.gov, I set it bang on, and then I wear it for like that day or a couple of days or something like that. So whenever I'm wearing a watch, it's pretty much bang on.
I'm so curious. I wonder how much time you've wasted.
No, I enjoy that process. Though. Look, if I didn't care, I wouldn't do the thing. I would just like look at my phone, get it somewhere near there, and pop the crown back in, and it would take a couple seconds. But like, I enjoy that process of okay, I'm gonna like wind it, get it all set properly, and the date, all that. It's part of like the bonding experience, you know, that you that you have with your watch. I know I'm not the only one that does this too. Zach, you open up. The time.gov.
Oh yeah,
right?
no, I set my watches to time.gov or
Likewise.
I mean, it's kind of psychotic to not do that if you're like a watch hobbyist, right? Like, what's the point?
So at any given moment, the watches that
exactly.
we're wearing on our wrists might be more accurate than not over the course of a year, but that moment in time.
When it stops, it isn't. No, it's
so
funny.
Patrick, can I ask Patrick how off does one of your quartz watches have to be before you would like reset it to time.gov or like a
now functionally it's like I just do it like twice a year. I'll set them twice a year with the daylight savings, and
however far it drifts, that's how far it drifts.
Yeah,
you're gonna
okay. And it's fun to
deal with it at the half year.
Yeah, it's kind of fun to track that though. And the Grand Seiko's, it's spot on with time.gov right now. So I mean that's a good indicator of where every other watch in my collection lies, whether it's my dad's old Adenac, my Tuna, the Persista when it comes back, and now the CWC. I'm curious to see which ones are as close to the Grand Seiko caliber, you know? So that's it's fun. It's its own fun little side project going on there.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's cool.
There is something really satisfying about, I used to own a quartz Grand Seiko, and there's something like incredibly satisfying about seeing it like remain accurate to the second, like weeks or months after you set it. Like it's just
so crazy.
It's kind of amazing that they're able to get a watch to be that precise.
Yeah, it is.
Agreed.
So, moving to a watch that, no, I guess it does have a second hand now. Zach, you weren't on the podcast last week, but a watch that we briefly talked about was the Audemars Piguet Star Wheel. You wrote about that, and I know that's the kind of watch that maybe you and I like to nerd out over a little bit. So I wanted to at least get your take on it and see what you thought of it, especially, well, I guess it on its own and then like compared to some of the 90s versions.
Well, I enjoyed your conversation on it last week, and I love that watch. Like when I saw the first images of it, I kind of like immediately was drawn to it. I think it's a beautiful object. I think the aventurine dial is really great. Previous to this Code 1159 release, I think the most, like highly coveted and most interesting Code 1159 was the perpetual calendar with the aventurine dial. So that seems to be kind of like a motif that they're sticking with that works particularly well in that line. I don't really have a ton to add to the conversation except to just say that I think overall the Code 1159 line is really slept on and underrated. I think, I have a friend in my local watch collectors group who owns a time and date Code 1159, and every time he brings it to a meetup, I'm just kind of blown away by how nicely it wears and how interesting the case is. And for a lineup of watches that was kind of like just sort of like dunked on, like when it was released, like everyone was just kind of trashing it. I think it's actually quite good. Particularly if the thing that you're drawn to in watchmaking is kind of like interesting, modern, very technical case designs, because they're just it's a fascinating watch to look at. And I agree that some of those initial dials weren't exactly like the most beautiful or innovative dials, but even those are a little bit underrated because you have that double curved crystal on the Code 1159 watches, which really kind of gives you a different perspective on the dial that's not really possible to see in a photo, or particularly in like the renders that you see on like the AP website and so forth. So
yeah, it's true.
Yeah, a big fan of the Star Wheel. The 90s versions are kind of a little, maybe like a little like dressy for my taste. Like they're quite beautiful, but I don't know that I'd necessarily want to like wear one day in and day out. But I think it's great that they brought the complication back, and the Code 1159 seems to be the right kind of platform for it. It just seems like a really good match.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I love the Code 1159 as a vehicle for doing kind of off the wall stuff like this, and I think that's like when it is at its best. The chronograph version I think works well. They did an open dial version. I think is really nice as well. The QP that we mentioned it works really well. I was at a lunch this week with Roman Marietta, the head of product development, I think at Zenith is his title, and Zach Blass and a few others from the industry, and we ended up talking about this AP for a while. And we all kind of came down on that.
It sucks.
No, we all came down and we all found things that we really loved about the Code 1159 outside of the time only or time and date variants of it, and we really think it's like we kind of landed on it being this perfect area, like space for them to do exactly things like this. But overall, I think Code 1159 maybe a slept on AP. So
buying advice even.
Yeah, exactly.
Grab all those 1159s.
That's our whole buying advice article. Buy more Code 1159
before they shoot up. Yeah.
They're apparently pretty tough to get. Like just like every AP is now like impossible to buy. Like people are buying Code 1159s as like for buying history, so they can get Royal Oaks down the line. Funny. So they're
discounted.
They're just as hard to get as any other AP.
That's how you're gonna get your 16202s, right?
Right. Yeah.
How else are you gonna do it? Yeah. Okay. Well, that's enough AP talk. Maybe for one day. So let's
2 minutes.
Yeah. Let's get into something interesting that happened also this week. Alpina released a watch with a bumper movement inside of it.
So cool.
That's right.
Thomas, you wrote about this watch.
Yeah.
Give us the scoop.
Yeah. So Alpina released two. What you got there, Blake?
Sorry, I was gonna pour a beer into this cup, but it made a very
that's fine. There you go.
Unpleasant
It's
sound.
ambiance. So
no, that's bad.
no, that's not bad at all.
I feel like you're at the pub.
Right. That's what this is supposed to be, right?
Yeah,
just like
yeah,
actually
right,
just having a conversation
right at home
the
for
pub.
some of you
Right.
drunks.
Right. So Alpina released 2 limited editions this week in the form of the Start Timer Pilot Heritage Manufacturer. That's a mouthful. So they actually released the same watch last year, and that's when they introduced their 6th in-house movement in the form of the AL 309. So that's their bumper movement, and it's not your traditional bumper movement because this one rotates 330 degrees as opposed to the traditional 120 degrees in the bumper movement. And apparently that there's these blade stoppers as opposed to the traditional springs on either side of the rotor.
Yeah. So it's an efficiency thing, right? So when it has more rotation, then it's building up more kinetic energy.
Exactly.
Its momentum to
but still
put
not
more power into the system.
Right. Still not as efficient as a.
I would say, I don't know, Zach, Kazan, if you've thought about this or if you know much about these bumper movements, but my feeling was that there's a greater potential for like parasitic loss of energy in that system than there is to like a ball bearing and rotor type system.
Right.
But I don't like. I'm not a mechanical engineer or anything. But like that, like just thinking about it,
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, that's convincing enough.
Yeah, for sure.
I have a vague understanding of physics, right?
Yeah.
Like, and
Some
based on that
right there.
based on that vague understanding, my assumption would be not that you would make assumptions, right? But
right.
Like and like just like look around. Nobody else like Omega doesn't use it anymore. No other brands have adopted similar designs or anything like that. There was another one that was like it had a weight on like a bar with a spring. Do you remember this? Or
I don't
something
remember
that would go like.
Was it from Omega?
Man. No, it was something like I think independent.
Okay.
Like within the last year or something
with
like
a spring.
that.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Never mind me.
That's how.
Have fun Googling that.
Right. Yeah. Just imagine a doodle on a bev nap. Yeah, this is my idea.
Yeah. That, folks, is our in-house mechanical engineer.
Right. Yeah. Everything was so convincing up until that.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, and then so this the dials on these were somewhat different as well. On last year's release, they had the kind of like applied baton markers. It kind of like came off as a dressier watch. This one that just released has a railroad minute track. It's got loom plots every 5-minute intervals and a set of Arabic numerals. So it kind of does look more piloty, I guess, or more field watchy. For lack of a better
Field
term,
watchy.
field watchy. Yeah.
Everyone
so
says that.
that was actually in their press release.
Yeah.
Field watchy.
Field watching.
Yeah, along with whatever Blake said about the movement. But I think it's a cool watch. I was uninitiated to the bumper movement in general.
You weren't
so it's
lying.
just cool to learn about it. And
It's
he was describing,
spring and a
or-
weight in a
Well, I
bar.
found it. Yeah, it's a Moritz Grossman hematic. It's you can look it up, Zach. It's a Moritz Grossman Hamatic, and this has like a moving weight that kind of goes like back and forth.
Okay.
Yeah. These are hard things to describe. Okay.
Yeah. No, for sure.
But great description of the Alpina,
Right.
by the way. I
Yeah.
like it a lot.
Yeah, Thomas. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And I think the only thing about the watch that kind of, if we're picking nits here, is the case size, which a lot of the comments came through with the same kind of comment as well. So the case is 42 millimeters in width and 40, I believe, lug to lug. So a lot of comments came through saying that they wish it was in a smaller size. But I think in general, it looks like a really cool watch. And
42 width, 40 lug to lug.
that's what
This might be among the larger watches with a bumper movement ever made.
Right. Yeah.
Oh,
that
for-
too.
yeah, surely.
42 millimeters.
I remember the one from the other year,
Yeah.
whenever it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's cool. I like seeing this go into regular production. And
Yeah. It came in two different cases, a steel case and a gold-plated case. The steel case had the navy blue dial, which is what I was leaning towards out of the two, and the gold-plated case has a gray champagne
Gray
dial.
champagne.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
Not like exactly. Well, hey, it was in
If someone pops open a bottle of champagne and it comes out gray,
that's true.
tell them to send it back.
Or if it's a cocktail that looks like your Rado dial, that's like green. Yeah,
That's why I went that route, right? That sounds a little more appetizing than the champagne of that color. I think.
That's champagne to me over the Alpina.
That's too green. This is like what is it? There's like the White Lady maybe or something where it's there's gin, there's maraschino liqueur, and there's green chartreuse with like some lemon juice in it.
Okay.
Shaken.
So to me, this
It looks
is
a little like that.
This is Dom Perignon at a nightclub with green neon lights. That's what this is.
Chartreuse has been mentioned more times on this podcast than any time on any other Warner Bound podcast cumulatively, like forever. Like, that's
secretly a goal.
Now at the nightclub, Patrick, are you the guy at the table with the Dom Perignon, or are you the guy just
serving the Dom Perignon?
No, he's the guy with the watch at the bar showing people the dial.
Doesn't this look like your champagne? No, this Alpina is pretty cool. The case reminds me of the Chronoris a little bit, where it's got that sort of cushion style, but like the hard beveling over the top edges. It's really cool. I like it a lot. I mean, it's nice to see a bumper movement back, I guess. It's neat that like Yemen's doing that micro
nice
rotor.
to see a bumper movement?
I mean, I don't know if it's technologically a better movement or not over the general like
the market says
auto
no,
winders we
that
have.
it's not.
Well, I mean, we'll see how this sells, right? I guess that's why they made it limited.
Well, I mean, watch history says it's not, because they used to make millions of these, and now they make approximately however many Alpina is making. So
I think the pure novelty of it's really cool, though. I do think that it's cool. Like, how many people are you going to see with a bumper movement unless they're wearing like a vintage Omega?
Yeah.
I mean, this is kind of a cool option.
Yeah.
It is a little bit larger, though, I guess. This doesn't bother me, though. The lug to lug is so short that I can't imagine that wearing poorly. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, those are kind of odd dimensions to wrap your head around,
Yeah.
just the numbers alone. But
Yeah.
I'm sure it was fine.
Yeah.
The rest,
Yeah, and the one thing that I also just kind of like read during just my little research, writing that article up, was that if you do have a watch with a bumper movement, do you feel like some people have said that you feel the bump like on your wrist? So I don't know if that's like, if that's like the novelty of it. You know, it's just like,
if there is, then that directly confirms that energy is going somewhere else other than putting power into the mainspring. The confirming the loss, the parasitic loss of energy.
Right.
into the
You
system.
shouldn't
because
feel
it's
it go bump.
well, exactly, because then it's going into your hand
Right.
if you can feel it.
right? Yeah, that's true.
Granted, I mean, if you really get a rotor spinning on some watches, you can
yeah.
feel
The whole thing will fly out.
like weight.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah,
all right. You and mechanical engineers, whatever.
know, they're like,
can
I think
the rest
this
of you
idiot.
chime in.
they are
here.
yelling at us right
Yeah,
now.
exactly,
They
yeah.
are yelling.
We hear you. We hear you.
Yeah. That's our vague understanding.
Right.
Here at Talk.
Yeah.
So, apologies.
Yeah.
To those more enlightened than us on this stuff. But for real, look up the Hermetic Moritz Grossman if you want to see. It's a pendulum style.
Okay.
Is what they call that. So
Interesting.
so there's that. Yeah. Maybe there's something about these different automatic quote unquote movements. So
Have you guys seen, speaking of just odd automatics, have you seen that? Was that an old Hamilton or Waltham where the back was at like a 30-degree angle, and then there was a spring mechanism? When you wore the watch, the back of the case would on this sort of system push against your wrist and then push into the mid case and wind the watch via some odd back plate. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Wow, no.
It's such an odd Zach Kazan. You know what I'm talking about? I'm not making
I don't
this up,
think
swear
so.
to God.
I don't think so.
Well, that design's dead, and I tried my best to explain it. I'll look it up and I'll holler, and maybe the audience knows what I'm
This sounds
talking
like
about.
like you would take it off you remember the Reebok pumps that had a
exactly.
little thing in the
Yeah, so you
tongue that
just-
you go
Right, exactly.
Like this is what you do with that watch.
Yeah, to wind it, it's just on the wrist, and you're just like giving it CPR, you know? Like,
Yeah. Live. Yeah. What are we missing here? Other automatic mechanisms out there in watch movements. So let us know. Let us know what we're missing down below. So this week we wrote an article where we attempted to impart some advice on how to buy a watch. Well, we at least kind of put some thoughts down about how we go about buying watches. Whether you choose to take that advice is entirely up to you. But I think there's some interesting advice in there. I kind of took a tack of like treating it like, where I said I treat watch purchases like getting a tattoo. I don't have any tattoos, and then that's kind of why, right? Because I'm always of the mind of like, well, I don't have to be in a rush. It's going to be there forever, so I'll come back to it, and you either do or you don't. So either you like care enough or you don't care enough. But that theoretically gives you enough time to think about it rationally, without being influenced by other outside factors that wouldn't normally factor into these kinds of decisions. However, I cautioned, you can't look at any of these watch purchases with too much rationality. Otherwise, you'll quickly get into a point of, oh boy, why have I bought any of these things? And it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense on that level. So, I think that there's a nice midpoint there and balance where you kind of have to go through your own process. And I kind of detailed what that was for me, which was kind of like a first sniff test of like, does this go with my style? Because I think there's a lot of watches that I see and I really like, but then you have to ask yourself, well, would I wear it? Does it fit with my wardrobe? What kind of experiences am I looking to have in this? Before you get to the, it's also like, is it really expensive or hard to find? Then you kind of cycle through this filter of like rationality to get down to a point. But then sometimes you just see a watch and you're like, oh, that's really cool, and you're just like, buy now.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Don't take my advice. That's just like a peek inside to the how I think about some of this stuff. But that said, like there's a lot of watches that have kind of like just stayed out there that I haven't bought, though I really liked them in the time. I've just never really came back around to buy them. And then I close mine with like, and that, you know, that's okay. You should be able to enjoy this hobby without feeling the need to buy everything that you like, because that's a very unhealthy way to experience this hobby. And you'll quickly find yourself in a bad way if you try and do that. So, Zach Kazan, you had some good insights as well. I don't know if all of ours differed like a whole ton, but
yeah. So my main like piece of advice is to like be open-minded and to buy watches and experience them like within your means. Obviously, don't go crazy with the credit card or like get in trouble with loan sharks or anything. Experience.
That's just good life advice.
Yeah. So be financially responsible, but
be fun.
Horologically adventurous, I think is my advice, because that's how you kind of like develop taste and figure out what you really like. It's through buying watches and experiencing watches that you that maybe don't work so much. So don't be afraid to make a mistake, and also be prepared to let things go like during the process. Like don't get too sentimental about a watch that maybe isn't like the watch that you want to own forever. Like you have to be okay like putting that on the forums or Reddit or wherever and moving on to the next thing.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
Yeah. Because ultimately, watches are not tattoos.
Yeah,
they are not.
No, they're definitely not
a permanent fixture. On
Zach, you're not a sentimental guy.
I mean, I'm sentimental about certain things, but I'm not sentimental about watches. Really, I mean, certainly not to the extent that I sometimes observe in the larger watch community. I mean, they're things like they're just objects. So I try not to get too attached.
Yeah.
The watches that I'm like most sentimental about are the ones that probably have some of the least amount of monetary value in my collection. At least because we if you have a conversation with my wife about buying a house or something and coming up with some big down payment and all that, and I'm always like, oh, of course I'd sell all these things. There are other things in life that I want to do, and it's I don't think any of these things are like, oh, this means that much to me that I'm gonna like compromise the goals of my family to have this thing, So
it's so funny. I was gonna mention a watch you were talking about off mic there. But I won't. I was going to say, but that could fetch a pretty penny in the housing market. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not overly sentimental with things. The one watch I'm wearing today that I wore into the office today, my Rado, it's the only mechanical watch I still own because I proposed to my then girlfriend at the time of 10 years on our anniversary, who's now my fiance. So I guess in
congrats.
For a successful engagement, I suppose I kept the watch. But I'm not, if it really came down to it, I'd sell it. But unfortunately, no one gives a damn about Rados. So, right. I mean, I don't
not
think,
true.
Not after listening to this discussion about the color of that dial.
Right. I need to see what Don Perignon and
It's a good thing she said yes. Because
right?
if she said no, thankfully she didn't say no, then you probably would have,
I'm just kidding. I'm sure people I enjoy Rado as much as I do. I've collected a few of their vintage offerings, and I got to say their modern offerings keep in step with what they were producing before. I'll say that the anchor isn't as mobile as some of my vintage Captain Cooks. It does bother me how this gets hung up, where before there's a fluidity to the anchor of the vintage ones. Maybe you guys know, maybe you don't know. But I've collected a few, and this is the only one I still have. And it's funny because it's a watch that I had reviewed, and then it was maybe a year and a half to going on 2 years later where I thought to myself, man, I really loved that watch. I looked it up, I contacted their team, and I was able to pick one up still, which was very fortunate for me because I couldn't get out of my head. But this is one of the only watches that's ever stuck like that.
Yeah.
And I don't know why that was. Yeah. Like I don't, it's not particularly special. I mean, it looks like every other Captain Cook aside from the dial and like the chaptering that's in there. But yeah, I absolutely love this watch. I also like the red numerals on the steel wheel here. There's a lot of charm to it.
Right.
And I feel like it fits me really well. It fits my personality really well.
I think to your point about kind of, you just kind of waited and it just ended up working out. I agree with you, Blake. Like part of my advice in that article was just being patient, because these things like, if it's a particular model, whether if it's not now or it's always going to be there later on, for the most part, right? Unless you're trying to find something that's super rare, and up until that point, like if it's that rare and you have probably done enough research to understand, like, okay, when it does pop up, like if you're ready, you'll be
you'll be ready
enough
to
kind of pull the trigger.
what you're
Exactly.
doing,
Yeah. And I feel like being patient just kind of opens up the window of time for you to just kind of think about it. Like you said, does it fit like kind of with my style? Is this something I could wear every day? And it also just opens up the window to like kind of do more research, right? In my little piece of the article, I said, I called it a 3 Ps, right? So it's like patience, persistence, and just being pragmatic, right? So like, being patient opens up the door to just be persistent. So be persistent with your research, do your research on the watch, do your research on the buyer. I feel like when that's all said and done, you just kind of like ask yourself those like questions, and is this purchase like sensible? And like Zach said, like you just don't want to get into a position where it's just like, oh wow, like I just like put like my kids like college fund into like this watch, that type of thing. And again, just to like end it, you could appreciate something from afar without like having to own it, and I think that's the beauty of this hobby, is that there are things that are just astronomically priced, and you don't have to own it to appreciate or not appreciate.
I prefer to appreciate things a good like 2 to 3 feet away from my face, just shy of my shoulder length. Yeah.
Right. Look, but I agree with like what Zach is saying. He's kind of playing devil's advocate to like you and I's thought line. Like you're never going to push yourself outside of your comfort zone and like learn new things about what you think about watches, or how your tastes can shift the more you experience those things. Like I know that you've reviewed some watches, spent some time around watches around here that you otherwise wouldn't have been like all that keen on, that have maybe shifted like how your perception or how you think about watches in total. We have that like luxury because we're around like a lot of watches all the time, but for like a normal person who, every purchase is a big deal potentially, but still being willing to kind of I want to try these new things, and putting yourself in a position where you can do that like responsibly, I guess is the kind of tricky part. I mean, I've written articles about kind of finding your lane and getting out of finding the boundaries of that, and I think we've all got watches that don't exactly fall into like what you might think we would have, right? Like the Reverso with you, like that's a strange watch, but there's something appealing about it, like owning that and wearing it. Has it like opened up any other like lines of interest for you in this hobby?
I think it's definitely increased my appreciation for JLC as a brand, but just watches as a whole that aren't just your archetypal like design, right? Like not the like dive watch with the bezel, that type of thing. So it's these watches now that are like that have last month has just been like a really good month for just watches that have like come through the office that don't look anything like a regular watch, like the Christopher Ward Belcanto, the Ulysses Nardin Freak, which is like really something cool. And it's just cool to like experience these things and kind of like it's an art, right? Like that's where like I don't think it's a stretch to even say that like watchmaking is an art. It's what these guys are able to do and how to display time in these different ways. I think it's like a really cool thing about the hobby, and that's just another thing about the hobby that I just I've been able to appreciate more. No,
that's good. It's good. So there are watches because of our process that we pass on for one reason or another, but they still kind of stay there in our head. Is there any watches from this past year, from the past couple years, from the past 10 years that have kind of like just stayed in the back of your head? Like I feel like usually you see a watch, not usually, maybe often though, you see a watch and you're like, oh, that's really cool. And there's a lot of kind of hype around it for a minute, but things die down. And then like a few months later, it kind of just fades away. But not every watch does that. Some watches just kind of stay there. You're like, oh, I really like that. And then you see it in your Instagram feed. And you're like, oh, yeah, I love that thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like I remember with it. And then you start to kind of come around to this like, where you start to kind of build a fondness for it, right? Because of these things. Do you guys have any specific watches that fall into this category? Do you want me to start us off? I've got a small list. I've got a small list of watches.
There's only one watch that I ever think about constantly that I would like to buy, and it's not because it pops up in my feeds. As a matter of fact, it pops up in no one's feeds because it's from a small brand that likely no one's ever heard of.
Yeah.
Paul Portino. Anyone Paul Portino? Heard of the brand? So they offer a range of watches from dress to sport, and I'll put it out there. I've been looking for this watch for years, and I missed an opportunity 2018, I'd say, to pick one up for just shy of $300. And I know with like the vintage market, the way it's going, that if I do find one in even semi-decent condition, it'll probably be gone for much more. But it's a Paul Portino Sea Nymph. Been looking for this watch for years, and I've only found 2 examples that I found were respectable and original. And I missed both those opportunities to buy one. So if you happen to have one, let me know. But
this is a watch that has come into your collection.
No, it's never been in my collection.
It's never been. You've never.
No, I've always wanted it. Yeah, I've always wanted
You've
it.
Always been looking for one.
It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful watch. Look it up. The dial's fantastic. It has these large applied numerals, and the negative space between these markers make what appear to be like a black sun in the center of the dial. And what's lovely about it is it's a sports watch. It was like a bezel-less diver, essentially. It was meant to be a swimming watch, I suppose. But you'll find a lot of these. But you'll find a lot of these with like salt damage on the dial. At least all the images I ever see of this watch have salt damage. But it like makes for a really pretty effect. It's a Sea Nymph. I'm assuming it was some member of their sports line. I wouldn't say it was good for diving, because look at the examples you're looking at now. They're all damaged. So either these people were careless,
So
or
a swimming watch,
a swimming
like as
watch,
distinct from a dive watch.
I would say that it's not. It was not meant for. It's shallow. Meant for shallow waters. Anytime you have a watch,
I mean, honestly,
is this odd? Have you guys looked at your manuals? There are when they give you depth ratings, they say this is good for swimming, this is good for diving, or is this just? Am I the only one who reads the manuals? I'm not crazy.
Like it kind of sounds like the Pelagos FXD, to be honest. It's not a dive watch built for depth. It's built for
swimming watch. Exactly.
I mean, that was an odd way to phrase that, but yeah, look it up. It's lovely. It's a black dial. Anyway, that's the only watch that I ever think about that doesn't exist in my collection that I would buy, and I want it because it's mechanical. How do they classify it? I'd be so curious to know.
I don't know. The page isn't even. Oh, it's sold.
No, that ain't it.
That's a sharp one, though.
They have some cool chronos in their collection too.
Yeah, okay.
A lot of the watches you'll find are actually plated in their catalog. The one I want is pure steel.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll find some images and link to this thing down below, and you can. What do you think about this?
Sea Nymph. What did you look at?
The Sea Nymph?
Sea Nymph. That's what it's. Yeah, that'll help a lot with your search, sir.
The risky click of the day here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Help yourself out. Yeah, go ahead.
There we go. Yeah, it's kind of like shark
Mm-hmm.
teeth. The big things.
Yeah, not too unlike shark teeth, and those are like.
Oh, you know what, Patrick? You've shown me this.
I've definitely showed you this before. Yeah.
Yeah. It's all coming back to me now.
So I've had 2 watches like this, the very obscure watches
Elusive
that I've managed.
Sea Nymphs.
The elusive Sea Nymphs, that I have managed to track down and add to my collection over the years, where I'm just taking advantage of opportunity. One I was actively looking for a very long time, and it was the Prometheus Ocean Diver.
Oh.
And I wrote a whole mystery review on the watch, so we'll link that. But that was one that. It's kind of obscure. Like if you were a Watch You Seek forum dweller in like 2009 or something, like you have maybe heard of this watch. But and then the other one is, I guess somebody that I would track down on the forum was kind enough to sell me his, so now I have it, and that's kind of like one of the most nostalgic watches that I have in my collection. But the other one was a DMH, the Fred Dingamus watch, the Dutchman that made these DMH jump hour watches in like a shed in his backyard that I owned very briefly and very regrettably sold. And I had never even seen one in the flesh before until the last wind-up watch fair in New York, and Eric Wind, of all people, of course, he would, had one just sitting there, almost exactly the same spec as the one I owned. So that was like, an immediate plunk down the credit card type of situation. But that's one of those kind of just, even amongst watch nerds, it's one of those, like, it's Paul Port now.
Yeah.
What?
I'm just
What is
waiting for
this?
the day I'm like walking through a thrift store or something. I just see one in box, like, $50. We'll give you that old broken watch. I'm just waiting for that moment, like, because that's the only way I feel like I'm gonna find one in the condition that's acceptable to me. So yeah, buying vintage is rough, guys. Especially now. I feel like there's
especially now,
it's tough. So yeah, I'd be happy to find it that way. But again, that's probably the only mechanical watch I'm looking for.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Right.
But in good condition, like how much, like
I mean, the one I passed up, like the crystal was cracked and heavily. Like you could tell there was some sort of water damage just to the crystal, because you couldn't actually see the dial. I could barely make it out, and I'm like, oh man, that must have patinated in such an interesting way. Like, I can't wait to replace that crystal. I was such an idiot when I was bidding for it too. This is off eBay. I feel like finding good.
so, but
finds on
the
eBay is
the
difficult.
prices on those are like relatively
Well,
approachable.
I think people try to get far too much. The asking prices I've seen on some of these is like ridiculous. It's like, it's a no-name brand.
Gotcha.
It's whatever the market's willing to bear, I guess.
Yeah.
And I guess these people feel that the excess amount of money they're asking for it is.
Because I was going to say, like, if it wasn't relatively expensive, like watch, like if you bought it for $50 at a thrift store, like, do you contain your excitement, like, after you get the receipt, like, so you just, like, you're not trying to give away the secret here, like,
Sucker.
Right,
No. I mean, any like decently, like, I don't know. It's like the vintage market's weird. Like, if the watch is even somewhat cosmetically appealing and has, all the hallmark, I don't know, like solid steel case, decent looking movement, and again is mildly attractive, I feel like people try to ask a high price for it, when whether or not it deserves that is secondary. But to me, that'd just be a cool way to find it. I don't know. I don't really have a cap so far as like how much I'd be willing to pay. But if I were to pay like $1,000 for it, I would want to see it in the box. I want to get the original paperwork. I want to leaf through all of that and like get to experience what it was like when someone purchased it originally. That would be the coolest experience for me. Like that's my Grail watch. It's so weird that's it, but I just love the way it looks. It it very much speaks to me.
Interesting.
I think about that one a lot.
Yeah.
What about Zach? You got any watches that are lingering?
So I don't know. I'm having trouble kind of like figuring out what the definition of lingering like really is. So I looked at my watch recon alerts, which is like where I go.
Those are lingering.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I feel like if it's kind of just hanging out long term in watch recon, it's I haven't deleted that alert. It's lingering. A couple things jump out. The Bulgari Octofinissimo is a watch that I've I'm always kind of tracking, and I sort of like I want to own one someday, but I just haven't been ready to pull the trigger for a variety of reasons yet. And I don't quite know exactly which one I'd go for. That's a watch where there's like a ton of different variants, and so yeah, that one kind of like I think meets my lingering requirement. And another one is a new watch that I don't even know if they've started delivering them yet, but the Bell & Ross Multimeter that popped up earlier this year that we wrote about. I really want to at least see one of those in person. I haven't seen one, like in the metal, yet. But I just think the dial is.
I've had a request.
It's an incredibly cool dial. I'd love to give that one a shot.
Yeah, I've had a request in to get that one in since it came out. I was really taken by that watch as well. It's kind of like a perfect.
Have that next to the Brew Method.
Yeah.
There's like all the overly complicated dials you can find.
Yeah.
That's its own collection, I feel. Yeah, the Multimeter is pretty dope.
What if they made a multimeter, but it was all like timing coffee stuff? Then that would have been arguably maybe more useful than like time. There's some crazy calculations you could make with that multimeter.
Yeah,
like if you were like flying a jet, you could like calculate your speed.
It's excessive. I wonder. Yeah, I don't know. I probably would never use any of those functions. I doubt it's. I don't know if it's a desire of yours, Kazan, to use the multimeter to its fullest.
Oh no, I'm writing about this for another article that I'm working on. But I've kind of like I have a bunch of chronographs in my collection, but like I never used them to time anything. I just kind of like the aesthetic of the chronograph, and I like pushing buttons, and I'm just sort of like drawn to that. So yeah, like I'm not interested in timing anything with the multimeter, like in particular. I think it's actually made for like for athletes. Like there's all these different like the scales are kind of like meant to mimic what an Apple Watch tracks, which is why the dial looks kind of like the Apple Watch.
But it scales up to like
tracker.
ultra high speed stuff. From
So
all
it
the way
has
down
like
to
a-
like a
a-
bike, right?
I think so. Like I saw like a video explainer of it, and like from Bell and Ross, and like they're really like they're targeting athletes.
So
Like
from your
specifically.
Sunday jogger to the
So-
Maverick.
Yeah,
to
exactly.
Get something out of
Yeah.
this.
So it can track speeds up to Mach 10.
Whatever
Yeah,
he was
essentially.
going in the beginning of that film. Yeah.
Yeah.
It also
And
tracks like like it has like a pulsometer and other other scales. So
Whoa.
all the scales.
I don't know. It's just a cool looking watch.
scales.
Like I'm interested in it purely for the for the aesthetics.
Yeah.
I like that they're mimicking what Apple does. It's so curious to me because when I saw it, I thought like this looks like an application. This looks like something that would
does,
be running on
yeah.
your smart device.
Yeah.
It's like all the rings
Yeah.
in different
Yeah.
colors, like closing.
But when you said that, it just immediately clicked. I'm like, it totally
Yeah.
makes sense that that's like the visual cue was coming from.
yeah.
That's interesting.
I've got. There's a couple of watches that are like every time I see, I'm kind of like, ooh, I really like that. Or I remember liking, or I had a brief experience with it that left enough of an impression on me that like kind of when I see one in an Instagram post or on a forum or something, like it kind of takes me right back to that moment, and I'm like, yes, I love that. The tribute to the 3705 IWC is still one that lingers. I like that watch a lot. That Sylvan Pinot watch that we saw at the HCI in Geneva lingers with me. I love that watch. The Romain Gaultier Continuum is another one. And let's see here. The Longines 190th anniversary with that watch that has like the carved numerals out of it.
Yeah, that's very
I
nice.
quite like that one. Let's see here. What else? And then, the JLC Geophysic True Second is another watch that I've always like had a real soft spot for some reason. It's like a weird complication. It's not a complication, I guess. In like somewhat of a generic looking watch, but I think it's like handsome.
What's true about the second?
It's a deadbeat second, so it looks like a quartz watch.
Oh,
Yeah,
but it's not.
but it's not. Yeah. So
You
say
sick
you would love it.
mechanical owner.
Patrick's brain is
we
breaking.
could just
Trying to mimic the kind of perfection I strive for. That's ridiculous. I want to see. You should please get this. Don't let it linger any further.
Yeah.
Please get it. I'd like to see this.
well, those they're a little pricey because it's a kind of a high end complication. It's only really found in not many watches. Like Gronfeld does one. Like it's not a normal thing that you find, and like very few watches do it. And it's generally like on very high end watches. It's a
so
part of
cool.
like a constant force type situation.
Yeah,
So.
and it's like a historically important complication, like used for like scientific purposes to get like a more like exact reading of the second. It's a really cool complication.
That's so dope.
Yeah.
And then the Zenith DeFi, that one like with the skeleton dial, like I don't know, I've always had kind of a soft spot for that watch as well. And going hands on with that Fuel Sap collaboration,
Oh yeah.
just a little while back, we kind of brought that. I was like, yes, this is such a cool like watch and case and bracelet or strap combo. You know, I don't know, I like it. I hope that they keep evolving on that collection. Wink, nod.
Zenith.
CC Zenith there.
That's funny. Yeah, I've never found a skeletonized dial that was particularly striking to me. Those Parmigianis recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are nice.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
like, did you like that? How does
I like
that
that a
stack
lot.
up to the?
And the Rochefort
five?
GMT, I still really like. I mean, that one is like a finesse to it, you know, where the Zenith is a little more. I mean, it's like orders of magnitude less expensive than the Parmigiani. So, you know, there's this, you know, it's. it's a different vibe altogether to me, where it doesn't look like the movement was designed, to like around the skeletonation parts.
Yeah.
And it was more kind of like a skeletonized plate or two that's kind of like put on top of where the dial would be. I don't know how to describe it. Zach, you owned one, right?
Yeah, I think a skeletonized plate on top of the movement is probably the right way to describe it. It's not actually. I wouldn't even necessarily say it's technically like a skeletonized dial. It's more just like an open dial where you can see the movement behind it. But it's like aesthetically, it's very cool. Like it's a cool looking thing. And I had a ceramic one, which was just like really great to wear. Really cool watch.
Yeah,
Very cool.
Thomas, anything you want to add?
Yeah, man. So I've been long on record as someone who really appreciates the GMT watch. For me, what it stands for as far as like traveling and kind of like the romance of traveling and kind of like the symbolism of that second time zone.
It speaks to you.
Yeah, it does, and it's just especially since like with the recent birth of like my son, and the traveling that just kind of comes with this job. I've been looking into adding some form of a GMT just so to kind of like hit that kind of like that need in my appreciation for like travel and whatnot. So
So not a particular model, just like GMT.
just in general, I do. Yeah, but here I do have like a couple here. So this one is not necessarily a GMT, but we've talked about this watch a bunch on the podcast. It's the Breitling Aerospace. It's the reference E75362. So it's the 40 millimeter titanium, and it does give you the second time zone reading there.
Right.
And then I don't know if you guys are familiar with this watch, but it's also an IWC. Let's see here if I can pull it up. So it's the UTC. Here it is. The IWC Pilot UTC TZC. So and there's a window at 12 o'clock that gives you a second time zone there.
Yeah,
so I thought that was pretty cool.
Just indicated by like a numeral.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really
It's a
dope.
24-hour disc.
If you want to
Oh,
take a
that's-
look at that.
Yes.
So it's the size
this
that
is awesome.
kind of gets me there, but that's definitely a watch that lingers, quote unquote. And then the last one is the Explorer 2. I mean, the 16570 Explorer 2 has something that has just always kind of
You've seen
has been stuck there in my head. And I know that a lot of people are going to knock me for this, but I do think that the black dial is better than the white dial. So that's just my opinion there. But Nick from
it's accurate.
Yeah, these are long conversations I've had with Nick from Alpena. Feel free to shout. Let him know your thoughts as well. But I just think that it combines the whole idea of the GMT travel, and also I kind of have this appreciation for alpinism as well. So the connection with history, with the alpinism history there as well is there. But those are the three that kind of still lingers. All three that kind of tell you a second time zone. So hopefully 2023 is the year of the GMT. We'll see if
Please buy the
You're the
IWC TZC.
TZC. Yeah.
This is the coolest, and not even for the reason you might be thinking. If you haven't looked up this watch, that is one of my favorite bracelets. By the way, I know IWC uses it with a handful of other models, but that I actually love just unique bracelets, and that has one of my favorite bracelets. But also just the way everything's laid out, it's so appealing.
Yeah.
Please treat yourself.
Yeah.
I don't know how to
please don't let that linger.
Yeah,
right?
I just want to don't rip it out of your kid's college fund or
Right.
anything.
Oh,
but,
no
I'd be
worries.
curious to see that one in the flesh. That looks really cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. The coolest IWC I've ever seen.
Oh,
For
there
me.
you go.
For me.
There you go.
All right.
It's just a cool take on like a pilot's watch.
Yeah.
Right on.
That's why it lingers.
All right. Well, what watches are lingering in the back of your head that you've never pulled the trigger on, but tell yourself you might someday? You never removed the watch recon notification for. Let us know down below. What watches are we missing here? Which ones should we be paying attention to? Thank you so much for tuning in on this episode. We look forward to talking to you next time. Till then, take care.